In this lesson, we'll be pre-composing the dog and creating a 3D animation. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up our leash and bone comp. And that's going to be this one right over here. And I want to go ahead and pre-compose basically everything but the text, and then get this to be the right size for us. So I'm going to grab the leash to leash, basically all of those pieces, and we'll hit Control-Shift-C and call this dog and leash. And then in this one here, let's go ahead and pre-compose the text into one. And we'll call this leash and bone logo type. And then here in our main composition, let's make this one the right size. So I'll go up to composition settings and we'll do 1280 by 720. Okay. So you can see it's a little bit too big, but that's okay because we are going to be using this as a 3D layer and zooming in and out quite a bit. So I'm going to turn on my continuously rasterize, or actually collapse transformations in this case, for the dog and leash, and then we'll go into the dog and leash comp, and I'm going to turn on this little continuously rasterized switch for all my layers. Now we may end up turning that off later because of some other things we're going to be using, but for now we'll have it on. Okay, and then I'm going to turn on the 3D switch, which we'll also need to turn on the inside of these pieces because we're going to be having our 3D here on the outside, and we're going to have our collapse transformations turned on. So it's going to look in there for those layers being 3D. So you can see how this looks now. So basically what I want to do is create an animation where we start out kind of zoomed in on the neck of this dog. And then the dog, we're going to kind of zoom out from that, and the dog's going to bend down and pick up this leash. Then we're going to zoom back a little bit further and see the dog kind of standing up with the leash in his mouth, sort of the way he looks now. And then we can pull back a little bit further to reveal the logo type. So with all of that in mind, let's go ahead and get started. So I'm going to just start out with the dog and leash, with this dog kind of close in here, just sort of zooming in right in the middle of his neck. So just about there where the black totally fills the screen. And we'll go ahead and select that layer, hit the P key to bring up the position property and set a keyframe. And let's give it about 15 frames to be able to pull out and see the dog. So I'll hold shift, hit page down one time to go forward 10 frames, then hit page down 5 more times to go those full 15 frames. And then we can just kind of pull this Z value here in the position to get a better look at the dog. And let's also kind of reposition him to pull down like this. Okay, so that's pretty good. Maybe even a little bit more. Just right about there. I think that's perfect. So we'll be able to see him kind of bend down. Once we zoom out, he'll sort of bend down to pick up that leash. Now we want to give him plenty of time to be able to sort of pick that up. So it'll be about probably a second. So let's give him 30 more frames. So I'll hit shift and hit page down 3 times. And by this time, I want to be zoomed out just slightly more. So I'm going to pull this back. So we'll be pulling back a little bit during that time, but not much. Okay, now we're getting some strange boomerang effects. That's all fine. Don't worry about it. We'll fix all of that in a moment. Now, the next key that I want to set, I want to give us about 15 more frames to kind of zoom out and see the dog completely. So I'll hold shift and hit page down to go 10, then add 5 more. And then we'll just pull this all the way out and up. We might even want to turn on our title action safe to be able to kind of gauge where the middle of this dog is. Right about there. And I'm going to pull it up a bit also because the leash and bone logo type is going to be underneath him. And it's also going to be a 3D layer, which will also be collapsed in its transformations. So we'll need to come in here and turn on our 3D switches, our motion blur switches, and our continuously rasterized switches, and our main motion blur switch. And then let's also grab our region of interest and crop that comp to the region of interest. Okay, so we are just moving right along, and that's going to go underneath here. And we'll want to place that at about the same position in Z space. So it looks like about here we're at 2285. So let's bring that up for our position and put that same value in. Great, so that looks pretty good. Maybe you want to scale it up a tiny bit just so it fits a little bit better underneath the leash and the tail. Okay. I'm going to turn off that title action safe now. And this looks like it's a little bit too high, so I'll just select everything and we'll move it down and over probably. You can turn the title action safe back on if you're having trouble figuring out how much space you need from here to here for it to be centered. I'm not really using it for the actual title action safe functionality. I really just use it as a grid for centering. Okay, so that looks pretty great. And then I'm just actually going to turn off the leash and bone type for a moment because I'm more concerned with just getting that positioning right. Okay, so looks like we have some crazy things going on with some boomerang, with that kind of going in and out and then moving and hitting really hard. And I want this to look like a beautifully smooth camera motion. So let's come back in the next lesson and we're going to be just kind of fixing that camera motion a little bit. It's just got a little bit too much of some crazy stuff going on, and I think we can make it look a lot better before we actually get into animating the dog. So stick around and we'll be editing that camera movement in the next lesson.